Hello and welcome to DigFin VOX, Voices in Digital Finance. I'm your host, James DiBiasio. If you enjoy the program, give us a like, share, subscribe. My guest today is Adrit Raha, Managing Director for Asia Pacific at Insurtech CoverGo. CoverGo helps insurance companies with enterprise-wide digitization. I asked Adrit about what are the trends, what these companies are looking for, how that's changing, and what new technologies such as generative AI mean for the industry and for insurtech. Adrit Raha, welcome to DigFin VOX.
Thank you, James. Good to be here.
So I'm looking forward to our conversation. You are the APAC head for CoverGo, an insurtech helping the broader insurance world with digitization, it's got its start. The company got its start in Hong Kong, but is now, I guess, a global business. And you yourself have a long career, and you've worked in insurance. You were co-founder of your own insurtech at one point. So before we get into kind of the big picture stuff around what's going on with insurance and digitization, just tell me a little bit about, what was the mandate for you when you came in with, you already had a lot of background, but then when you came in to run APAC for CoverGo, what was the job at that point?
Yeah, no, thanks, James. So I guess, I sit at this interesting intersection of having spent time within carriers across multiple geographies, across multiple disciplines. So if you think about it, I've spent time in London, Middle East, Singapore, and done some global roles with some large P&C insurers, right? And as part of that experience, I then went on to run my own startup in health and embedded insurance, which continues to sort of operate and do fairly well out of India. And I think bringing all of that together and circumstantially having met the founder, Thomas, we ended up, having an honest conversation about, what he wants. And I think two things. One was I guess there's a bit of pull and a bit of push, right? So I think he was looking to move to Europe and Americas to start looking at, what's next and how do we expand the business to new territories. And he needed someone to come and help him manage all things Asia, right? And Asia Pacific, I guess. And as part of that, it's about, how do we bring a bit of stability and maturity to existing businesses that we have here in the region? How do we continue to maintain some of the relationships with clients, investors, key stakeholders, and then how do we think about our next phase of growth? So that's, I guess that's what brought me to CoverGo, and it's been a year in, so loving every day.
Great. We'll get to some of that. I definitely want to talk about how you scale an insurtech out of this region and where you guys see that path. I think it'll probably end up dovetailing with the other thing I want to ask you about, which we'll get into now, which really is kind of where the insurance industry is when it comes to digitization, kind of at that enterprise level. This is sort of what CoverGo started off doing, helping carriers, I guess, sort out their selves. What is the way that those needs are changing?
Yeah, I think that's a very relevant, very important question that you've asked, James. So let me start by perhaps explaining the landscape of the technology evolution that's happening in insurance, and it's hard. Let me start there.
Yeah.
It is slow and it's hard, and the reason for that is fundamentally one reason. If you ask me, it's core legacy rigid systems that have just been around for a very long time, and they do their job fundamentally. So the job gets done utilizing those old systems. What's not happening is it's not nimble, it's not modular, it's not easy to sort of keep up with the pace of change that we're seeing. And that's where, we're beginning to see, I guess, the introduction of companies like CoverGo and new age, no code, microservices first, modular technology companies that come in to support insurance digitization fundamentally.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we're seeing the big change.
But why is it that hard? Because obviously banks also have the similar issues that they've had to deal with. Yet I hear it from both people in banking and from insurance that insurance continues to be several years behind. And why has it been harder in insurance? Is it less, they don't have the people? or they've just taken the back office systems for granted, or they're not trading 24/7 algorithmically, so they don't have the same need for that kind of compute. What's the reason why insurance has been the laggard?
Yeah, no, again, very, very, very relevant question. I think a couple of things there, right? So one is, like banking, insurance is now embarking on what I would call a 30-year digital transformation journey, right?
Mm.
It just hadn't done it because there wasn't a need to do it. Versus with banking, given it was a very direct to consumer, especially on the retail banking side, framework, there was a need to build out a framework that allowed consumers to interact differently, bankers to perform their jobs differently. Insurance is still very heavily intermediated. We mustn't
Yeah.
forget that. And I don't think that has changed.
Particularly on
Uh,
obviously anything facing a consumer, there's going to be an agent or maybe a bank assurance relationship there.
Absolutely.
But what about, let's say, the general insured, the P&Cs? They don't have necessarily, I mean, obviously they probably sell through brokers. So again, it may not be a direct customer relationship, but these are still sort of corporate type relationships. I would think that excuse that, oh, I need my agent to be face to face having coffee with somebody doesn't quite fit the property and casualty side of the business.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So when you dig deep and look under the hood, it's actually quite the opposite.
Mm,
So when you think of insurance as a whole, be it property, casualty, life, or health, and if you think of those three broad categories, whether it's consumer or commercial, 98% of insurance is intermediated in the broader APAC region.
okay.
And if you break it down further, you're looking at probably 60 to 65% of that through agents and brokers. The rest is a combination of banca, potentially motor dealers, and any other framework of intermediation that you see, right?
Right.
So and that's not going away in my view. And I think because of that, the digitization plays primarily on efficiency rather
Mhm.
than front-end customer interaction necessarily. And
Yeah.
of course, it is to also to keep up with the changing times. So how do we start thinking of, um, you know, AI, ML, right?
Yeah.
And these are buzzwords that are creeping up on us, and we've got to be ready for them.
So obviously, COVID was a massive catalyst for many businesses to go digital, including insurance. When you had everything locked down, that face-to-face bread and butter connectivity was gone, right? And it was gone for a sustained period. So people had to figure out a different way to sell products, right? Or generate leads. Um, but CoverGo was around before COVID. So did you all, and before your time, I guess a little bit, but you've been in the industry, so you should have a handle on this. What was how important was that? And was that a one-off, or and people might just now say, well, that's over, and so they can slow things down again? Or has that been a true catalyst to meaningful change for many different companies in your space?
Yeah, yes and no, right? And I
Mhm.
think as you think of end customer interaction, the answer is yes, right?
Okay.
As you think of bringing in efficiencies to your own processes and your own systems, the answer is, I think, a mixed bag, right?
Okay.
And that's where, if you ask me, is the big difference. I mean, if you break it down further, right? I mean, where are we seeing some of the big transformation happening? You're looking at efficiency, right? How do I deploy quickly? How do I improve operational efficiency fundamentally? How do I then possibly build better customer experience? How do I automate processes? How do I offer flexibility and agility? And then ultimately, how do I demonstrate some impact on cost, right? So if you think of these levers of transformation and change from a technology perspective, you're sitting with a customer base which really has benefited from the overall COVID sort of dilemma, right?
Okay.
Whereas the internal efficiency pieces are still playing catch up, in my view.
Okay. Yeah. Um, we did a piece, I think from Swiss Re Research, showed that I think it was a global piece of research, but it also included Asia Pac, that something like, I don't have the number, but 80% of all the digitization projects in the past couple of years have really just been on claims. I guess the low-hanging fruit, perhaps. Does that dovetail with your experience? And has it been successful? Are people happy with the degree of automation in claims? And are we going to see insurers be able to now take steps on top of that?
Yeah, it's claims is very much the front of mind buzzword as well. We're seeing a lot of that, right? That's not necessarily how it started. I think
Mhm.
we've seen our journey start with what we call our patented product builder, right? It's where you allow insurers to create products and distribute products very quickly without having dependency on legacy systems, right? That's really how we started, and what we've evolved to now is, of course, an end-to-end policy administration system, which can be deployed in modules. And what's really interesting is we have examples where, AXA in Thailand, as an example, which is a live use case, and we can talk about them, have specifically deployed the claims module to bring efficiency to their capabilities in the local market, but also to actually bring the in-house capability from a TPA back into the AXA sort of entity. So, as you go through that process, you're absolutely right in, and probably corroborating what Swiss Re's report is, claims is very much front of mind. Now, the bigger question around, has it been successful? I think there's always more that can be done, right? And claims as a standalone is, while it seems the right and the first thing to do, it doesn't bring the efficiency that it needs to without the necessary integrations or the connectivity with what you would call your policy administration or your rules engine. And if you take a simple example, if I don't know what benefit I have, how can I adjudicate it?
Right. So chicken and egg question that you must have to grapple with every client is, do they need to do like the deep systems re-architecting, move everything to cloud first before a company like CoverGo can help them actually realize gains? Or do they need to get started with whatever quick win they can get, and hopefully they're also doing something so that they get data warehousing, they get their, they get all the hard stuff also in order separately?
Yeah, I think, coming from, and this is my personal experience of having come from the, industry and having been part of the startup sort of ecosystem, I'm a big fan of short-term tangible wins, right? And what I mean by that is, I think we've seen numerous times large multi-million dollar projects over 3 to 5 years fail miserably. And what I mean by failure, it doesn't mean that they haven't come up with a solution. It just means what they set out to do wasn't what they ended up with, right? So I think from that perspective, I'm a big fan of saying, hey, what's the business objective? How do we really find small, agile frameworks to deliver business outcomes and do it in a meaningful manner where the business and the technology teams of large insurers can truly get value, right?
So I guess, Adrit, my question is, how much value do they really get if they're still working off of creaky old on-prem mainframes? Just are those quick wins? Are they kind of just like sugar highs?
No. So the quick wins are. So let me say absolutely, but I think the quick wins are more to demonstrate confidence, right? Okay. And let's not forget, we are a young company, we are a startup, right? We are going up against large 150-year-old multi-geography complex organizations, right? We've got to be able to build confidence and successfully deliver business outcomes. And I think that's where the shorter, smaller, limited frameworks have helped us build that credibility, as we've now, in this example, if you look at MSIG in Hong Kong, has adopted our platform for an entire end-to-end solution, right? Okay. As we work with another large global health insurer in Hong Kong, they've started with our proposal module and now beginning to introduce other aspects as they recognize and get comfortable and build confidence internally.
Yeah. And I guess as an insurtech, as a startup, as a super optimistic, excited person, which you have to be in these businesses, there's always that tension between, you need to attack the whole value chain versus, well, maybe, but actually maybe we just start in this one thing. And you've already addressed this, but I'd just like to ask it a slightly different way is, where do you see, is there a change, or does that change eventually happen with insurance companies or other large enterprises in terms of where they go from, no, that's too big, you're boiling the ocean, it'll never work, to, oh, well, if we like this one thing, this shiny thing here, but it turns out that to make that really work, we need to also get, all these other things kind of move in sync with that.
Yeah, no, Jimmy, you're spot on. So I think the point I was making around finding a short-term business objective first approach is more to start, is to land and expand, as we call it, right?
Right.
Is to build confidence. But you're absolutely right. I think you cannot ignore the bigger problem of, we have 35-year-old systems sitting on-prem, having been worked on for so many years that nobody has any idea what's going on, right? There are no integration capabilities in and out of that system. You've got data layers that are a mess. So I think you are absolutely right in saying, hey, do we need to think of this holistically? And is there a play to start really phasing the approach to transition from this mainframe, monolithic on-prem system to a new age system that delivers business objective outcomes and business wins, right? I think the key there is a transition and to build out a nice, relatively easy, yet something that's important and executable for the
Yeah.
business, right?
Yeah.
In a phased manner.
Yeah. You're a young company. Everyone's still kind of going through this. Are there any examples out there where you can say, okay, well, these transitions have been successful, and they're transformed, and now they can do other things?
Yeah, we're looking at it ourselves, right? As we're working through the different clients, not just in APAC, we're getting interest out of Saudi Arabia, out of parts of Europe, out of North America now. And what's really interesting is that they're looking at us precisely for this reason. So I think as we go through the journey, we're beginning to see tangible outcomes, right?
Yeah.
And
So
again,
what does that look like, though, Adrit? What is that? Obviously, there's never anything as simple as, okay, now we're done, and like go to the beach.
Sure.
But what realistically in the time frames that you would be operating with these, what does a win probably look like, or what kind of expectations do you try to frame when you're talking with your clients?
Yeah, so I think if you break insurance down into its value chain of product distribution, policy administration, renewals, and claims, if you think about that value chain, it's got to do with three things in my view. So it's either got to impact your cost,
Mm-hmm.
it's got to impact your revenue, or it's got to impact your customer, right? And the way we look at it is those have to have a tangible outcome, right? So from a cost perspective, it's got to give you efficiency. So it's got to reduce cost ultimately to run your business using our technology versus somebody else's, right? The second is, am I bringing a better way, a more efficient way, and a better way to be able to increase sales, right? And the third, which is again a very tangible outcome, is let's go measure the NPS and see if there's been an impact, right?
Right.
When I talk to any business leader in any insurance company, I would always start there and say, don't do the project if it's not going to impact one of these three key areas.
Are you finding it easier or harder or just the same to deal with these large enterprises? They have a reputation for being kind of difficult. They're just not geared to work with startups or fintechs. And some of them are getting better at going agile. I guess that's probably a work in progress at a lot of places. But in general, super long sales cycles, burns up all your revenue or any POC cash before you can even really get anything going. These kind of typical complaints that one hears. What's your experience now? I mean, are we still kind of stuck with that kind of slog, or is it getting better in a way that a small company like CoverGo can interact with big players like AXA or others?
Yeah, I think it's certainly getting better, right? And that's shown in the numbers. I mean, we've grown, we've doubled our revenue between 22 and 3. We've quadrupled it between 21 and 3. So in the sense that, we've been able to demonstrate that, and that's only come on the back of being able to convert deals in a successful manner, right? But I think it's an important point to make. You cannot ignore B2B enterprise technology sales having long sales cycles. I think it's a fact.
Just
I think
it's a feature, not a bug.
it's part of the play, right? And I think that doesn't change for the IBMs of the world, and neither does it change for a young startup, right?
Yeah.
But what we can do differently is, and what we've seen come out is quite interestingly, how do you shorten that, right? And that has sort of come to fruition in my view. I think we're beginning to see, insurance companies adopt, as you said, agile approaches, bite-sized problem statements, and therefore really say, okay, I want a solution in 3 months or 6 months, not 5 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's helped.
What kind of expertise do you need to have when it comes to different aspects of automation? Obviously, we've been talking about data, and we've been talking about some of the bigger infrastructure that's maybe not in CoverGo's specific remit, but neural networks, different types of text reading and comprehension, to, I guess, fill in a claims form or understand, assess a claims validity. What are the tools that are coming into play now?
Yeah, so I think the stuff you mentioned is almost in the shinier bucket, right?
Mhm.
I would say those are good to have, and we're seeing a lot of I guess interest in, whether it's OCR technology to be able to read, physical paper, or whether it's AI and machine learning to help automate processes. We're beginning to see a lot of that being experimented on, right?
Mhm.
But my view on that today is we're still a ways away. And the reason for that is if you don't fix your core, the value of layering it with something like an AI model is unhelpful
Yeah.
ultimately, right?
Okay.
So I think the problem, I come back to the original problem statement. It's old, rigid core systems that have just been around for so long. They're just unable to keep up with the pace of change that we're seeing.
Yeah. I'm working on a little thesis here, of mine, and I want to run it past you. You let me know what you think of this. So the work that you're doing with insurers at the stage of development that they're in, uh, is not going to go away, and you probably have lots of great business days ahead of you because there's lots of insurance companies that need this kind of fundamental help, and advice, and the kind of easy to use software to help them make the most of this transition that they're going through. Okay, great. Once they get there, once they've got enough of their house in order, they understand data, they understand how to govern it properly, and they can start. Now they're starting to introduce some of the generative AI stuff. So, for example, I did an interview with AIA last week. They obviously a sophisticated institution, and that's where they say they are. Um, and the thing with Gen AI is a couple things. First, it moves the focus from all that really in the weeds operational efficiency stuff to more the supporting the agents and much more out customer service. And then, but also it's easy. I mean, that's why ChatGPT, for example, is such a famous thing in just such a space of time because it's intuitive. Any idiot can use this stuff. You just have to basically just get some APIs and you're on your way. So where do you see over time as your clients kind of graduate? You help them. Okay, now they've got a proper data setup. They've got the right compute. They know what they're doing and they've got a mission. But then all of a sudden they're like, well, actually, we can do this ourselves. So I, kind of trying to test your sense of, is there a shelf life on the kind of work that you do? And is there, how do you see Insurtechs kind of evolving over the next year or two to make sure that they're in these conversations?
Yeah, no, I think a phenomenal question. I mean, the jury is not out on where anything's headed, right? I think my gut tells me that core systems will remain core systems. I
Right.
think you need stable mainframe frameworks to be able to operate your business on, right? What you're looking at is the intersection between how do you get that data layer, how do you get the policy administration layer to be compatible with the
Mhm.
new technology that's coming our way, right? How do you leverage machine learning or AI or robotics or perhaps anything else that we're beginning to see to help with whether it's efficiency or whether it's, again, revenue or whether it's the customer? If you ask me in these three levers, how is it truly impacting, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to be the key, right? That's going to be the key in my
Yeah.
view. So I don't see it becoming obsolete. Where I see it is really enabling the insurers to be ready for the new age technology that's coming our way.
Yeah. So, Adrit, you mentioned at the beginning of our chat that you're the fintech that you had been co-founder of and still have a hand in was all around embedded insurance.
That's right.
So I'd love to ask, this might be a little bit beyond what CoverGo is there to do, but I'm sure you could bring it together for me. You know, we hear about this at conferences a lot. It's a buzzword. Everybody likes to think about it, but do you have a sense that embedded insurance is a real thing in this region? And are as more insurers do go through this rational process of digitizing things and automating, are they, do they seem to have a clear goal in mind when it comes to open or embedded insurance?
Yeah. I think embedded has been, very much part of the buzzword recently. But I think, in my view, is you take a step back and it's been there for a long time, right? So
Okay.
what is embedded? I mean, the OGs of embedded are bank assurance and motor dealers,
Hmm.
right? If you think about it, and they were embedding insurance to every customer that bought a product from them, right?
Right.
Um, and that then transformed to the world of travel, where with every airline ticket you were offered travel insurance. That then transformed to device protection, where with Apple you get Apple Care, right, underwritten by AIG globally, and in fact I was involved in that in the region, so I'm quite
Yeah.
familiar with how that program is run. And then from there you started getting innovative, smaller ticket, relevant products, as they call UBI, or usage and or it being relevant to the customer. And that's where you're seeing either insurtechs
Hmm.
or insurers trying to sort of understand if there's a space there for them to participate in, right? So to come back to answer your question, I think embedded's been there for a long time, right? And it's a proven model. Now, bringing technology to the mix, what it does is, again, bring efficiency to be able to do it much cheaper, much quicker, bring better customer experience, and therefore have micro products with micro premiums, um, being able to be a profitable framework, right? So you can actually sell a product without human interaction, which means there's no cost selling. So that's where I think embedded is heading. Now, of course, I can share some of my own experience having, introduced spectacle insurance and shoe insurance and fitness insurance into markets like India, where, we were selling almost 2 million. I think at its current state, it's selling maybe upward of 2 million policies a month, right? And you've got similar players. You've got Cover Genius that's trying to do it globally, and you've got Igloo and Koala that are running it in other markets in the region. So I think it's very much here to stay. The question, though, and this is an important question for not just insurers, but for the new age insurtechs, is how do you scale it and
Hmm.
how do you make it a meaningful business, right?
Yeah.
Because at this point, when you think of macro, you've got a commercial consumer that's already skewed. You've then got within consumer or retail insurance, motor and health and life. And then within the P&C space, you've got possibly travel and warranty and accidental damage. So everything else is left with a very small pie. So when you take a step back and look at that macro, it's just a small component of the overall insurance space. So how do you start making that meaningful is the big question that I would
Yeah.
ask.
So the last thing I'd ask you about is scale and funding. So obviously CoverGo, got to start in Hong Kong. You're in Singapore. Tomash, the founder,
Yeah.
is off, conquering new worlds.
And the tech.
What was so you guys are in the process of scaling, finding those solutions. What's been I guess the secret that unlocked this ability for you guys to go from being a small insurtech in one market to becoming an international player?
Yeah, so let me comment on funding, and then let me comment on sort of how we've gotten to where we are, right? So on funding, we're really proud to have announced a Series A round. It's almost a year and a half ago now. I think it was a $15 million round, which we announced, and really proud that we were able to get that and get some really good investors, strategic investors, through the door. I can't talk a lot about it, but we are going through a process of hopefully announcing a bridge round soon, and I'm sure our founder will talk more about it. But really the magic potion is there isn't a magic potion,
Hmm.
right? I think it's important to understand that you've got to get out there with an intention to deliver value, right? It's got to solve a problem, it's got to deliver value, and if it does, you will see inbound interest, right? So don't get me wrong, we have a very robust sales framework and marketing process in place to deliver our message and attract the right kind of customers as we need to. But a lot of it is on the back of references, a lot of it is on the back of hearing about us and looking at what we have and really understanding if there's value to be had. And I think that's where we've seen the growth from Asia now into the Middle East, into Europe, into the Americas. And we're really excited about that.
Yeah. Obviously, the fact that you are there as the APAC head shows a degree of maturity in the business now. You've been on the job for a year. Fast forward, crystal ball it 2 years from now. I know it's a long way, but where do you, let's after you hit your third, what would be one way that you want to say, okay, we did this here in this
Yeah.
region, what's the big play that you want to be able to kick back and say we did that?
Yeah, I think the macro for us is, we want to get in the next couple of years, we want to raise a big B round and be clear about that. What that means is we need to get to a certain revenue threshold. Obviously, that means we need to have solved problems for large, complex businesses across the world. I think that is fundamentally what we want to get to, right? We've set our eyes on that. Now, what does that mean for me and in this region? I think I'm very confident that we need to execute. We need to be able to deal with enterprise grade problems in an enterprise grade solution framework. And that's the transition we're going through, right? From a young company to a big company. And if we're able to do that with meaningful partners, meaningful clients in Asia, I think I'll sit back and, be a happy man, right? But I think if I take that into a further tangible framework, right? What does that mean? It means that in the identified markets where we are today, and that is Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand, we want to do a lot more. If I look at the frontier markets for us, it's Japan and Australia. We want to start understanding how do we, look at those complex, large markets for us. And how do we then get partner ready? And what I mean by partner ready is how do we start working with large consultants to redistribute our products? Those are the three big things. If you ask me, if we're able to tangibly accomplish those at the end of that period, then I will truly be a happy man.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, that's a great, let's end it there, Adrit. You've been very clear about outlining some terrific ambitions. Of course, if that comes true, then your clients will be also very happy. So good luck, and I look forward to catching up at the next opportunity.
Sounds good, Jamie. Thank you very much for having me.